If you really like Sekiro and hate Elden Ring, boy have I got a class for you. Unfortunately, you don't get a grappling hook, but the Samurai is a great versatile class for melee and range, and it's really fun, so let's talk about it. This class guide series is quick beginner setups to get you going in Elden Ring as specific classes, which you can then develop yourself freely throughout your adventure. Let's start with character creation. Now, as a samurai, you start out at soul level 9, and your main stat is dexterity, which is because we're going to be using the bow as well as the Uchigatana as our starting weapons. You do have a really good amount of endurance for your stamina as well as vigor, so you have a bit of health, and your strength at 12 is pretty solid as a starting kit. Your starting gear is just very solid across the board. You get the Uchigatana, a longbow. It's the only class that starts out with a weapon like the Uchigatana that has bleed on it, and some relatively average armor that actually looks really sick though. I think the looks is more important here than the resistances, let's be real. Now, we're always going to pick the golden seed as our keepsake, and for your flask, we're practically putting all of our flasks in health, though I really think maybe one in FP because we're going to be using a lot of Ashes of War for this build, so having a little bit of FP recovery is actually well worth having. How to play this class. This is a really solid class, and it's recommended for new players and veterans alike because of how versatile and just generally fun it is. With the bow, you'll pretty much use it to thin out enemies, firing arrows using that mighty shot Ash of War, which does tons of damage in a one-shot a lot of enemies in the game. And then once they get close to you, you're going to kill them with the Uchigatana using that unsheath Ash of War, which is extremely solid. It has such a quick attack, and it does tons of super armor damage or poise damage, whatever it's actually called, where you can knock them down and critical hit them. It's really good to use. So you're going to be using a lot of those Ash of War between the mighty shot and the unsheath, as well as switching between the longbow and the Uchigatana for short and long range. And you will need to craft your own arrows. In the beginning, the animal bone arrows is really all you can get until you do find more recipe books. You can buy them from vendors or find them throughout the world, but Kale at the Church of Ella will sell you the cookbooks that you need to be able to make the bone arrows. Just go farm some of the goats at Stormhill. There's tons of them up there. They'll drop the bones and you'll be able to make yourself some arrows so you won't run out. But as you develop, you can actually get better arrows to be able to use. But basically, the general flow of combat with this build is you'll start at range, you'll do a little bit of damage, do some mighty shots, try and thin out the herd. Then when they come to you, you'll just switch to the Uchigatana and slice and dice them. You can use the jump attack here to close distance faster than just waiting for them to come to you. It will do a decent amount of damage and it's worth doing. I don't really use the shield with this build at all. I pretty much just stick with the bow and the Uchigatana. It's worth noting that you can two-hand either the bow or the sword without having to switch what hands they're in. You just hold either triangle or Y on the controller and then press LB or RB for whichever weapon, and it'll switch to being the two-handed, so you can use the Ashes of War. It's well worth doing because then you can switch between, so if you're in range, you can quickly mighty shot and then switch back to Uchigatana and clean up whatever's left. Really, the strength of this build is just how good the starting gear is. The longbow and the Uchigatana are both really solid, especially the Uchigatana that does blood loss bleed up, and they've got a really good bow that has decent range, and you can just get better arrows as you progress and keep leveling both of these weapons up. For bosses, I mostly just use the spirit summons and then deal damage from range. I'll occasionally get in close range and do some unsheath attacks and deal some damage in the melee range, but you've just got to be careful of your dodges if you are jumping into melee because we don't have high resistances here. Let's talk attributes, and your main attribute is going to be dexterity. This is going to benefit your Uchigatana as well as your longbow, and then we're going to put points into endurance for the extra stamina, as well as equip load so we can put some heavier armor on without fat rolling, and vigor to get ourselves a little bit more health because we're not really using a shield. You will take some chip damage or some damage here and there, so it's good to have a high amount of health just to keep yourself topped up and alive. For gear to get, there isn't really much, but there's kind of two things you need to think about. The first is the Arrows Reach Talisman above Stormgate. So at the Gatefront Ruins, that gate, if you actually go up there, go around Stormhill and go up there, there is the Arrows Reach Talisman, which will increase your bow's effectiveness range. And the next is really just to replace your armor. I know it looks sick, but it doesn't have that high of resistances, especially for a melee class. And if we're not using a shield with this build, you could use a shield, but if we're not using a shield with this build, then you want to have some really decent armor with good resistances so that if you do take a hit, you're not going to die. And really, you could just farm armor from enemies. Most enemies will drop something, or you could buy something from a vendor, or even wait to get to the round table. There's some good knight armor there at the round table hold, but there's plenty of armor around. I don't think you need to like hunt for a specific set. You just got to keep in mind that you will need to replace it. One of the best things about this build really is that you don't need to replace your weapons like at all. Like, you've got a longbow and the Uchigatana, both are really solid. You should be upgrading upgrading these weapons, go down to the Limgrave tunnels and farm some smithing stone so you can upgrade them. If you do want a weapon option, you could go the twin blade, which can be found at the Dragonburnt Ruins. You can jump down here. Just make sure that you are going in the right tunnel. There is one tunnel that contains rats. That is the wrong tunnel. Turn around. It's a trap. Please believe me. But go down the right tunnel, get the twin blade there. And the twin blade's a really good weapon, but I think the Uchigatana and the bow are just perfect starting weapons. You do tons of damage just right out the gate with this build. The samurai is a really solid starting class. Check out my Elden Ring mistakes video, which goes through 5 different things that you need to be wary of in Elden Ring. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.